Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all of you all to our Journey of Self-Discovery course. We are on day 2 of the Journey of Self-Discovery course. And before we begin today's session, I'd just like to recap what we discussed yesterday. So yesterday we did this topic known as the search for happiness. And we began the discussion by talking about what are the common things between humans and animals. We discussed that there are 4 common things, which is seed, sleeping, eating, enjoying and defending. And then we found that there are 4 differences: ability for higher inquiry, ability to experience. And then we saw that there are problems of 2 types: relative problems and real problems. And we discussed the definition of a relative problem is one man's food is another man's poison. And we saw the definition of a real problem is common to all, no one wants it, but no one can avoid it. And we saw that there are 7 real problems essentially: birth, old age, disease and death. And in addition to that, adhyatmic klesh, which is problems related to the body and the mind; adi bhautik klesh, which is problems related to caused by other living entities; and adi daivik klesh, which is problems that are caused by natural disasters. And then we saw that to solve these problems, there were 2 types of solutions. One is temporary solutions or superficial solutions, and the second one is permanent solutions or real solutions. And we found that there are 3 temporary solutions that this world is offering us to handle problems that we go through in life. The first one is known as scientific advancement in sense gratification. The second one is the real solution is when the boy gets connected back to his father. And only when we get connected back to our eternal Father, who is God, then we can experience real happiness. And then we found that for us to be able to experience real happiness, we need to solve the real problems. That means we need to get out of the cycle of birth, death, old age and disease, which means we need to go to the kingdom of God. So we're trying to find the right thing, which is happiness, in the wrong place, which is this material world, which is named as dukkhalay. Dukkhalay means a place of misery. So we're trying to find happiness in a place which is stamped as a place of misery. So we're trying to find the right thing, which is happiness, but in the wrong place, which is the material world. So therefore, this discussion brings us to a very pertinent question, which is, does God exist? Now, if this whole concept of father who's a millionaire, father who is extremely rich, and only when we get connected back to our father, everything will make sense. All that makes sense only when the father exists. So today we're going to focus on this topic, does God exist? And from a practical and a realistic perspective, we will try to search out proofs for the existence of God. So if we ask ourselves this question, does God really exist? Now, how many of you all here, believe that God exists? You can put up your hand. Wonderful. I can see some half hands raised up. How many of you all believe that God does not exist? 1. Thank you for being honest. Many times when... Oh, that's a third category. That is what it means by raising half the hand. So when we're not really sure, you're not like fully,
The one who doesn't believe in God, he is insane.
No. Right now, this is not the day to speak like that. Here we are completely open. We are happy that people are honest. And we are actually encouraging people to be honest. So definitely we wouldn't pass such comments and we would not judge anybody in that way. Many people, when they come to a temple and ask this question, naturally they'll put up the hand. Ask the same question in a pub, I'll tell you, half the people over here will not put up the hand. So the environment also matters, right? So, if people do believe in God, why do people believe in God? There are essentially four understandings of why people believe in God. The first understanding is that everyone has desires, and we need someone who can fulfill our desires. And then somebody happens to be saying that, I can fulfill your desires, and then some people go into the line, wanting to connect with God just because this person can fulfill our desires. Or some people have a fear of the unknown. We don't know exactly many things in life. So because there is a strong fear of the unknown, many people tend to believe in God. And many people believe in God absolutely out of peer pressure. Sheer peer pressure, And there are so many people who believe in God. I have also to believe, Might as well believe. Too many people can't be fools, And the fourth reason why people believe in God is because of what is known as blind following. That means some people are just absolutely followers of traditions without just logically understanding and thinking. I'll tell you, instead of illogically following tradition, it is better not to follow any tradition. Instead of not understanding the purpose of what you're doing, without understanding the essence, if you just follow, on an external level, it's actually very superficial. And people who are having the ability to question, they don't follow blindly. They ask. And unfortunately, in today's world, you ask people, why we follow this? And the answer you get is, सवाल नहीं पूछने का. You have to follow. That's it. Don't ask too many questions. And the very fact that somebody says don't ask too many questions, that raises more questions. Why this fellow is saying don't ask too many questions? Something must be wrong, right? So one time a sadhu came to a village, and this man was a very exalted person. So all the villagers wanted to hear him. So they asked him, kindly come and enlighten us. So this man came. There were about 1,000, 2,000 people in that place. And he asked all of them a question. He said, how many of you all believe in God? Practically everybody raised up their hands. This man said, if all of you all believe in God, what do I have to tell you all? He walked out. So they got bewildered, They didn't expect that. So they said, please come, please come. Next day they got him again, somehow or the other. And he asked again same question. How many of you all here believe in God? Nobody raised their hand. He said, my God, I am sitting in the midst of so many atheists. I might stop believing. And he walked away from there. The third day they went to him and said, please, last time come. And again he asked the same question. How many of you all believe in God? Half of them raised their hand and half of them didn't raise their hand. So he said, those who believe in God, explain to those who don't believe in God. And he walked away. Many times, people behave exactly like this. They are understanding acceptance or non-acceptance of God depends on the circumstance in which they are. This is known as circumstantial faith. So, according to the situation in which we are, we choose to be believers or we choose to be non-believers. If the situation is more favorable by being a believer, we are believers. And if the situation is more favorable by being a non-believer, we are non-believers. This kind of faith is known as circumstantial faith. One time there was a student who was answering an interview. And just before the interview, this boy started running around the whole campus. And he started asking all his friends, do you have a tika to put on the head? So his friends were bewildered. This guy, never in his life ever he wore a tika on his head. And he had no faith in any kind of religion. And suddenly what happened to him? So he said, no, just give me. And somehow or the other he put some tika and went in and answered the interview. And he came out. And they asked him, why did you ask for it? He said, I saw the interviewer going in. He had a tika on his head. So I knew if I have to clear this interview, better I also have one. Just to influence him, he did that, There was one doctor who was inaugurating his clinic. And he organized a Satyanarayan Puja. And all his friends, they went to attend the Satyanarayan Puja. And one man asked him that, how come you are organizing a Satyanarayan Puja? You have no faith in God at all. And how come you are organizing a Satyanarayan Puja? This man said, see, the Satyanarayan Puja cost me 150 rupees. And if God exists, he will be satisfied in 150 rupees. And if he doesn't exist, 150 rupees doesn't matter for me. So many times people tend to believe in God or do certain rituals because they don't want to take chances. If he is existing, let him also be happy. I don't have to spend. Anyway, I'm not spending too much. So these are some of the reasons why people believe in God. And if people don't believe in God, it's because of 3 reasons. Essentially, these 3 reasons cover all the aspects of why people don't believe in God. The first reason why people don't believe in God is because there is no proof for the existence of God. Where is the proof? If there is proof that God exists, then I'll believe Him. But if there is no proof that God exists, why should I believe Him? The second reason why people don't believe in God is because I can't see God. Why should I believe in someone that I can't see? So show me God and I'll believe in God. Or show me at least one person who has seen God. Then I'll believe in God. The third reason why people don't believe in God is because they say that if there is God existing, how can He allow so much suffering to exist in this world? If there is God existing, how can He be so cruel that He allows so much suffering to exist? Essentially, these are 3 reasons why people don't believe in God. Today, we will discuss the first 2 reasons. Why proof for the existence of God and why we cannot see God. Or can someone show me God to be able to believe in Him? And the third reason of why bad things are happening or why suffering is happening in this world, we'll discuss on day 5. The whole session is going to be focusing on that aspect. So, now we'll discuss what are the proofs for the existence of God. I'm going to essentially talk about 4 proofs for the existence of God. The first proof is called as creation implies a creator. Anything in this world that is created by someone. For example, who is the creator or inventor of the telephone? Alexander Graham Bell. Who is the inventor of the steam engine? James Watt. James Watt. Steam engine, I said. Who is the inventor of the telescope? Galileo. Who is the inventor of the light bulb? Edison. So, all of these inventions have an inventor. Now I'll ask you another question. Who is the inventor of this? One time, Newton, he made a model of the solar system. And the model was such a model that if you rotate a wheel, it had an axle. If you rotate the wheel, the whole, all the planets would rotate in this exact way. So, one friend of his came in the morning and he looked at that model and he was really impressed. He asked Newton, who made this model and what is the purpose of this model? Newton said, today morning when I got up, I just found that this model appeared suddenly. Just appeared by chance. And there's no purpose for this model. Just like that. His friend said, come on, how can you insult the person who put so much effort in making this model? And then Newton said, if this model, which is just a model of the solar system, cannot come by chance, then how can the original solar system, which is so perfect, come by chance? So his friend, he absolutely had no faith that somebody could have created the solar system. So Newton wanted to just show him this. Many people, when they talk about the concept of creation, science talks about the creation being formed by the Big Bang theory. The Big Bang theory essentially says that everything originally came from a point. There was a point at a certain point of time. Technologically helpless. We are happy to assist you. But we can do it right in the beginning. So, what was I saying? Yeah, I was saying, the Big Bang essentially says that everything originated from a point, and at some point in time there was nothing existing, and after a certain point in time, a blast happened, a Big Bang happened, and that point before the Big Bang happened, it had high, very infinite pressure. It had infinite temperature, and it had infinite mass in it. And suddenly the blast happened and the whole thing spread out. And that's how slowly the universe got formed. I will talk to you about a construction company. This is a very interesting construction company, and they construct in a very interesting way. So they take a piece of land and they put a dynamo, and when they create a blast, next day morning, a 100-floor building is ready. This is known as Big Bang Construction Company. Have you ever heard of construction happening after a blast? Whenever a blast happens, destruction happens. Whatever is there gets destroyed. The question now is that if the universe is created by the Big Bang, you know what we are really telling? You know what it really implies? The spiritualists say that the universe is created by God, and the scientists say that the universe is created by a point. Essentially, you're replacing God by a point. There is, from a scientific point of view, if you study, what is science? Science has axioms. Axioms are truths that cannot be changed. Axioms are truths that have to be met for any theory to be science. So there are many axioms in science, out of which 2 axioms say that if anything has to be scientific, it has to be physically describable. It has to be physically describable. And the second axiom of science is that it has to be mathematically verifiable. That means you should be able to physically describe the whole thing. And the second thing is that you have to be able to mathematically form an equation for any event to be called a scientific event or to be called a scientific understanding. This is the axiom of science. This is not my understanding. This is science. Anybody who is a science student understands this axiom. But the funny part is, as far as the Big Bang theory is concerned, science says that it is physically indescribable and mathematically not verifiable. Can you imagine? The same science is talking about their proposal, their own theory, as defeating the 2 most important axioms of science. That means essentially, if you see from a logical perspective also, where did the point come from? There is no answer. Who exploded it at a certain point in time? Every explosion that happens in the world, some terrorist organization claims we did it, right? Somebody other claims. Nobody can say by chance a bomb फूट गया. नहीं होता ऐसा. Every explosion is claimed by somebody having to do something to trigger the explosion. What is the purpose of the explosion? There seems to be no purpose in this one. And for something to explode, it has to explode into something. This theory, Big Bang theory, explains that before that point, nothing existed. So where did it explode into? So the whole concept of time and space is very weirdly explained through the whole theory. Essentially, the fact is like this. If anybody who doesn't believe in the God being the creator, and he feels that the Big Bang is the creator of everything, that person feels that he is replacing the word God by the word point. It is as much faith it is required to have faith that God is a creator, that much faith you have to have in understanding that the point is a creator. So in one sense, you come to the same equation. Anything in this world that is created always has a creator. Whatever you think, whatever concepts you bring about in this world, it always has somebody who creates it. So similarly, if this entire universe, which is such a complicated mechanism, exists, don't worry about what's happening. Nothing falls. There's a different type of bang happening on top. This is the biggest bang. And this is just to create as I said, there's a lot of music goes on in our temple in different ways. Sometimes it comes from here, sometimes it comes from there, sometimes it comes from there. But in spite of all this, if you can focus, that means you are really getting trained to hear nicely. See? More bangs. So the first proof for the existence of God is that creation implies a creator. The second proof is laws imply a lawmaker. Anytime, sorry?
I have a question. What if somebody doesn't believe in the existence of God, at the same time he doesn't believe in the Big Bang
Science.
theory?
Yeah.
The Big Bang theory, not
That's
science
fine.
per se.
That's fine.
How do you explain that type of...
A third, okay. So let me discuss the four proofs. So now we may not believe in this or that. That's fine. But after we see all the four proofs, we have to discuss logically. How do we go further? We can choose not to believe in anything also. That's also a fourth option. First, let us discuss the four things, and then we will discuss your thoughts. The second one, which says laws imply a lawmaker. Any law in this world that works, you should understand that there is somebody who's making sure that the law works. Why do people stop in traffic lights when there is red signal? Why do people go when there is green signal? The reason is because they know if they don't, there's somebody who will be catching me. There'll be somebody who will be penalizing me. There'll be somebody who will be punishing me. Therefore, every time there is a law, and every time you find people following that law, the natural implication of that law is that there is somebody making sure that the law works. For example, when airplanes fly, the airplanes are flying in the air, but there is somebody in the control room of the Earth station who's making sure that the airplanes are coordinated well. So there is some traffic signal, there is some law that is working, that is making sure there is no collision. Traveling in space, so much monitoring happening, so much focus, hundreds of people on the Earth stations monitoring airplanes that fly in the air, and after all that, it makes sure that there is no bangs, there is no collision that is happening. Have you ever wondered, in space, so many planets are moving around, so much movement is there in space, who makes sure there is no bang? In fact, the whole system in space is so perfect that you can almost predict 100 years later what's going to happen. You can almost predict when a meteor is going to fall. So much precision and so much perfection in the systems. In fact, the systems are so precise and perfect that no flaws happen. The law of gravity. It's not that Newton invented the law of gravity, he only discovered it. The law of apples were falling even before Newton found it. The law of physics, refraction, reflection, all the laws, they work perfectly anywhere in the world. The law of mechanics, it works perfectly anywhere in the world. So whenever we find laws functioning perfectly, what do we understand? There is somebody making sure the law functions. So laws imply a lawmaker, and they also imply a law keeper. So only when law is kept, then it makes sense, then people will be actively following that law. So if somebody makes a law and runs away, like somebody said, God is like a watchmaker. He makes the watch and that's it. His role with the watch is over forever. Most people, they don't go back to the watchmaker. The watch runs on its own for its life. So, if God was like a watchmaker, then how does he make sure that everybody is following the laws? So he is not just the maker of the law. This whole thing implies that he is also the keeper of the law. which actually means that there is somebody monitoring to make sure the laws work perfectly. The third understanding is organization and order. In this world, whenever you find organization and order, that means there is somebody making sure that the organization and order is perfect. One man from a Western country, he came to India, and after coming to India, this man, he came to a conclusion. He was leaving after a couple of years living in India. So somebody asked him, what was your realization of living in this country? This man said, my realization is that God exists. So they were surprised that how did this fellow come to a conclusion? So they asked him, did you go to some temple? Did you go and discuss with somebody, read some scriptures? He said, no, very simple. I used to work a lot with government offices, and nobody works, but still the country is running. And surely God is working, God is making it work. So anywhere where you see organization and order, then you find that there is somebody who's making sure that things work. Like for example, suppose a boy, he gets up in the morning and he sees on his table a gift kept on the table. So one way of thinking is that this gift came by chance, just appeared by chance. Another way of thinking is that he can imagine an imaginary Santa Claus or some kind of a imaginary person coming and giving the gift to him. And a third way to see it is that his parents have worked hard and really thought that they want to give him this gift, and they kept the gift on his table. So many people, they feel that the nature's gifts, all the things that we receive in this world, have just come by chance. Suppose somebody stays in a hostel very far from his parents, and the parents send him a check, for his maintenance and for his tuition fees and things like that. So the postman, he comes and gives a check to this boy. Now, if this boy says, thank you postman, you are such a nice person, you give me a check, and embraces the postman, does it make sense? The postman is just deliverer. So essentially, the parents who have worked hard is compared to God, who is like a sender. And the delivery boy is the organized universe. And the checks that come are like gifts of nature. All the different things that come into nature are gifts that are sent by the sender. So many times people, they do not look at the organization and order of this world and just conclude without seeing the reality. The light bulb, we discussed, invented by Thomas Edison. It took him 10,000 attempts to finally come to inventing the light bulb. So such a powerful unit the light bulb is. Now can you imagine this bulb, which is millions of times more powerful? Do you think nobody invented this bulb? One ray of the sunlight, for 1 second, the amount of energy that one ray of the sunlight emits for 1 second, it is equal to the amount of energy that human civilization has consumed from the beginning of history till now. One ray of the sunlight for 1 second. So can you imagine what power this bulb has? What kind of wattage and what kind of power this particular bulb has? Let us consider a syntax tank. Now syntax tank stores water. And the reason syntax tanks are used is so that, high-rise buildings, buildings that have more floors, you need constant supply of water. And you need water storage also. 1,000 liters, 10,000 liters, 100,000 liters storage tanks available. If there is one hole in the syntax tank, gone, useless practically. How much ever you patch up that hole, there is at a certain point of time it becomes useless. Can you imagine this syntax tank stores millions of liters of water floating in the air, and if an airplane passes through this syntax tank, it splits into two and it doesn't leak. And have you seen clouds leaking? Somebody pokes the cloud and water falls down, Perfection in creation from a mechanical point of view. Somebody who's a mechanical engineer can appreciate this. How can somebody create a syntax tank that never leaks? That can never leak? And how can somebody create a syntax tank that is lightweight in spite of holding millions of liters of water? People love to carry Tetra Packs, juices, so that it's portable. easy to handle, doesn't leak, things like that. What about this Tetra Pak? Perfectly packed, leak-proof, easily portable, citric acid is supposed to be one of the most dangerous items as far as clothes are concerned. Citric acid falls on cloth, it's very dangerous. So citric acid are always packed in highly sealed containers. In nature, citric acid available in small containers, lemons, and highly portable, doesn't leak, and it's safe to carry around also. So essentially, what I'm trying to tell you all is that there is a lot of organization and order that goes on in this world. Many people who feel that nature works by chance, anything that works automatically also has a controller in the beginning. I don't know how many of you all have used these toys which had key behind, or you must, I don't know if you have seen it ever in your life. In the olden times, you used to have a toy, you had to really turn the key for a long time and then leave it. Then as long as the key is turned, the toy moves around, moves its hands and legs and things like that. As soon as the key is over, you have to re-key that toy. Similarly, in nature, though nature apparently seems to be working automatically, there is somebody behind that automatic machine. Like somebody was telling me yesterday that there are automatic cars coming up, where you can set up in the GPRS system where to go, and the car goes from one place to another on its own, drives on its own, and without any driver. Now, even if you have an automatic car that reaches from one place to another, to put on that GPRS system and put on the ignition of the car, you need some human being intervening. So even in the most organized setup, there is some organizer who is behind that setup. There is a very interesting story. One time, Narada Muni, he was traveling around, and he met one very scholarly and very ritualistic Brahmana. And this man, he was very inspired seeing Narada Muni. He served him, he worshipped him. And then while Narada Muni was leaving, this man asked Narada Muni a question. He said that when you go to God, you keep going to God often. When you go to God, just ask him one question on my behalf. Ask him that when will I come back to him? Narada Muni said, okay, no problem, I'll ask him. You're doing so much for him, so much seva and so much arti and so many things. I'll ask him. So then Narada Muni went further in the same village. He met a cobbler who was stitching shoes, very simple man, not very scholarly, but he had great faith in God. So this man, he also asked Narada Muni the same question, but he asked a little differently. He asked Narada Muni that please ask God if I will ever come back to him. So Narada Muni went and he asked God, these two people asking this question, what should I tell them? So God said, tell the Brahmana that he will never ever come back to me, and tell the cobbler that in this very lifetime he will come back to me. So Narada Muni got bewildered. He said, come on, what is this? This person is apparently doing so much for you, and this person is doing hardly anything. God said, I'll tell you how to find out. When you tell them this, they'll ask you a question. They'll ask you, what was God doing when you saw him? And you tell them this answer. You tell them, when I saw God, he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. Narada Muni said, come on, how is it possible? Threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. God said, just go and do what I say. So Narada Muni came down. He went to this Brahmana, and the Brahmana asked him, so did God tell you something? Narada Muni said, yes, God told that you will never come. It will take many hundreds of lifetimes. This man said, come on, how is it ever possible? He said, I don't even believe that you met God. Narada Muni said, I did meet him. So this man said, if you met him, what was God doing? Tell me. Narada Muni said, God was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. This man said, just see. And he started making a big noise of it. Just look at this person. How is it possible to thread an elephant through the eye of a needle? This fellow was just fooling. He never went anywhere. And he just didn't believe Narada Muni at all. Narada Muni realized why God said that. He went to the cobbler. The cobbler was sitting happily doing his job. So he asked Narada Muni, seeing him, did you meet God? He said, yes. And God said that in this very lifetime you will come back to me. And this man started dancing and jumping. And then he said, when you saw him, what was he doing? I want to know what God was doing. And Narad Muni told him, he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And this man said, wow, what a person he is. God can do anything. Narad Muni said, wait a minute. Do you actually believe that he is threading an elephant through the eye of a needle? Do you actually believe it? This cobbler said, what is the big deal for God? He said, this whole banyan tree under which I am sitting, if God can stuff the entire banyan tree in a small seed, what is the difficulty in him threading an elephant through the eye of a needle? And then this man kept dancing. And that's how Narad Muni understood that a lot of things in this world apparently may seem to be, from an external perspective, illogical. But if you see it from a practical perspective, if you see it from a deeper perspective, there is a lot of logic and there is a lot of common sense even in the things that we see in this world. There's so much perfection in organization and order that actually is a proof that God exists. There's a fourth proof that there is existence of God. This fourth proof is known as design implies an intelligent designer. There are many such examples. I'm just taking one or two examples now. Let us consider the example of a giraffe. A giraffe is such a tall animal, and it has a neck which is so long, many feet long. So to support that neck, can you imagine if there is a tall building which is 100 feet in height? Now, to send water to such a height, you need a strong motor below. That's when you can pump the water up. So similarly, in a giraffe's neck, which is so tall, can you imagine blood has to reach the brain? So the giraffe has a heart which is 11 kilos in weight and 2 feet long. Pumps the blood right till the brain. But it's very interesting, when the giraffe bends down, if it is bending down to drink water from the ground, can you imagine if the heart continues pumping at such a speed, what will happen? The brain of the giraffe is so small. If the blood flows at such a speed, it will blast and come out. So the giraffe has something known as a one-way check valve, and it has a spongy tissue in the neck. So when the giraffe bends down and the heart pumps blood, the spongy tissue absorbs all the blood and it only sends the required amount of blood to the brain. And when the giraffe comes up again, the spongy tissue squeezes and sends all the blood up. So can you imagine what accuracy and what kind of perfection is there in the design mechanism within the giraffe? I'm sure you all have seen bats in your life. If you have ever seen bats, you understand what speed at which they travel. The interesting thing in bats is that they can't see anything and they only move around through sound vibration. So they throw a certain frequency of sound ahead, and when the frequency bounces back, when the sound bounces back, using that they maneuver. If in a room there are thousands of bats, what happens? Every bat is throwing sounds. So there will be confusion, there will be chaos, which sound I threw, which sound you threw, And bats don't have time to discuss because they're moving at rapid paces. And the most amazing thing is, every bat, the frequency of every bat in the universe is different. Now, who makes sure that the frequencies are set? It is not that the baby bat which is born, is born, I am going to use 106 hertz frequency, It's just automatically set to perfection. You will never ever find, even in a room of thousands of bats banging each other and falling down. It's almost to perfection. So, when we see laws that are governing to such accuracy at an atomic level, a macroscopic level, and a macroscopic level, at both the levels there is perfection. I'm sure all of you all, if you have studied chemistry, you will remember HCP, FCP, CCP, all these structures that are there, crystal structures basically. These crystal structures are molecular level structures of any item, any element in this world. There are molecular level structural understandings. So these structures are so precise and perfect that even if one small change happens at the molecular level, the properties of that substance changes completely. The color changes, the smell changes, the taste changes, the property changes completely. So if there is such perfection at a microscopic level and such perfection at a macroscopic level, it is explained that the earth in the solar system is so perfectly placed that if the earth rotates a little too fast than what it is rotating right now, there will be too many tornadoes and hurricanes in this world that life cannot exist. And if the earth rotates slightly slower than what it is right now rotating, then it will become too cold at night and too hot in the day, that again life cannot exist. So perfectly, there is such a precision in which practically every small thing in this universe works that one cannot but understand that God exists. So essentially, these are the 4 proofs for the existence of God. Laws imply a lawmaker, creation implies a creator, organization and order, and design implies an intelligent designer. Now, people have this question that, can you show me God? If I can see God, then I will be able to accept or appreciate the existence of God. Let us ask ourselves 3 questions. If I want to meet the Prime Minister of the country, and I want an appointment with the Prime Minister. Now, the first question is, who are you? If you want an appointment with the Prime Minister of the country or the President of the country, the question is, who are you? What is your qualification to be able to see the Prime Minister or the President? So similarly, if you want to see God directly, first question is, who are you? What is your qualification that you want to see God? What is your qualification that you demand to see God? The second question is that in anything in this world, for a result to be achieved, there is a process to be followed. Like for example, in science, it is thought that 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen results in water. Now, the question is that if somebody says, I don't believe it, how do you help that person? The answer is that come and see it working. We will show you the experiment how it works. We'll combine 2 molecules of hydrogen with 1 molecule of water, of oxygen. And if the fellow says, no, I will not come anywhere, I want to just see like that only. Not possible. So in science, when you want to see a certain result happening, you have to follow a process, a procedure. The question is, many people want to see God, but unfortunately, they are not ready to follow a process to see God. What is the process you are following? If you are ready to follow a process, the result of the process will be you will see God. And the third thing is that at the present state in which our mind is, the mind is so hazy and so contaminated that with such a dirty mind, such a contaminated mind, such an unfocused mind, what is the possibility of seeing somebody who is extremely pure? Our minds are completely uncontrolled. And with such uncontrolled minds, it is very difficult to focus. One man, he came to a sadhu and he told the sadhu that, I want to learn how to control my mind. The sadhu asked him, what do you know about mind control? This man said, I know so much. I practice a lot of meditation, this and that. So the sadhu said, so let's see how much you know mind control. So he told him, I'll give you a small test. You do the test, then you come back and then we will discuss. So the sadhu said, you go back home, close all your doors and windows, sit quietly in a room, close your eyes, and for 1 hour, don't think of the red monkey. And then you come back and tell me what is your experience. So this man went, closed his doors and windows, sat down, closed his eyes, and for 1 hour he was trying not to think of the red monkey. And guess what? The only thing he could think of was the red monkey. This man came back to the sadhu and he said, so, what is happening? The only thing I could think of was the red monkey. Then the sadhu told him, just see, this is the state of your mind. So with such delicate mind and such unfocused mind, we are trying to channelize our desire to see somebody who is extremely pure. So the first thing is that, what is our qualification? The second thing is that, to see anything, the result of something, there is a process. Am I ready to follow the process? If I am ready to follow the process, the result will be that I will be able to see God. And the third thing is that, what is the state of our mind? If our mind is pure, then we will be able to see something which is pure. There is this theory of cause and effect. The theory of cause and effect essentially says that whenever there is an effect that is there in this world, behind that effect there is a cause. Like for example, if you see a fan rotating at full speed, then immediately you understand that the fan is rotating because the cause is that there is electricity. And because there is electricity running the fan is rotating. If you see an arrow flying in the air, that is an effect. So immediately you understand the cause is that there is somebody who is shooting the arrow. Somebody who is, made the effort of shooting the arrow. If you see puppets dancing, singing, and there is very synchronized coordination, then you immediately know that there is a puppeteer who is actually making it happen. So whenever in this world there is an effect, you also understand that there is a cause to create that effect. So the unseen is proven by the seen. Just like in a string, in a garland of pearls, in a ornament of pearls, you will find a lot of pearls are stranded on a string. You can never see the string generally. The string is below the pearls, within the pearls. But the string actually holds the pearls together. So in this world, there are many things that we can't see, but there are many things that we can see. So whenever we see the effect that God is creating, whenever you see perfection in the creation, whenever you see things working systematically and perfectly without external intervention, then you understand that there is somebody who's making all the things happen and work. There is somebody who's making sure the whole thing is connected. So the unseen is proven by the seen. So the question now is, what is the definition of God? Who is God? Let me ask you all some questions and tell me if you all can give a 1 hour talk on these topics. I'm going to give you some random topics and tell me how many of you all can give a 1 hour lecture on these topics. First of all, you tell me how many of you all can recognize these topics. If I ask you, can you talk about the medulla oblongata? How many people can talk about medulla oblongata for 1 hour? You know what is the medulla oblongata? Yes. Those who are in the medical field or those who are having some understanding of science know. But how many people can speak 1 hour about medulla oblongata? How many people can speak 1 hour about Fourier transform or Laplace series? Complicated terms, Or how many people can speak about DSP techniques, digital signal processing techniques? Or how many people can speak about diagonal matrices for 1 hour? So whenever I use all these terms, these are specialized terms in different sciences. And it requires specialized understanding of these sciences to be able to speak on this subject. Now if I ask anybody in the world, especially in India, to come and speak about God, each person can give a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 24 hour lecture also on God. The question is God so cheap that anybody can and everybody can speak about God and get away with it? Unfortunately, in today's society, that's what is happening. People who have no idea, people who have spent no amount of time studying these subjects, feel they are qualified and they have the rights to speak about it. Therefore, before we understand and appreciate the concept of who God is, we need to understand what is the definition of God. If somebody says that I am God, or if you say that somebody is God, the question is, what is the definition now? What is the standard of somebody to be God? In today's world, the standard is faith. If I have faith in somebody, then that person is God. That's it. So here are two definitions of who God is. The first definition of God is known as spec, S-P-E-C. So that means God is the supreme source of everything, which is the first understanding. Just like if you take water that is coming out from a tap, what is the source of that water? The source of that water is, it's not the tap. The tap is connected to a pipe. The pipe is connected to a huge reservoir of water. and that reservoir of water gets its water from the rains. So there is a constant understanding of who the source is. Like for example, if there is a small baby, and you ask the baby, you asked somebody, who is the source of this child? The father is the source of the child. Who is the source of the father? The father's father is the source of the father. Who is the source of that? His father. His father's father's father is the source. So everything in this world has one particular source. So many people assume that if everything is created, then God also is created. So if God is created, then whoever created God, that is God. So essentially, when you come to a person or something, some power, whatever you call it, right now we are not defining what it is. If you come to someone beyond whom there is no creation, that person is God. Essentially, when we hear this concept that there is one person who creates everything, from whom everything comes, and he has no creator, sometimes people get bewildered. Say, come on, how is it possible that somebody doesn't have a creator? Let me give you a scientific understanding. In this world, if you have heard of the law of conservation of energy, the law of conservation of energy says energy and matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can only transform from one form to another. So if energy and matter in this world is also not created or destroyed, then why are we doubting the fact that God doesn't have a creator? So essentially, if you look at a novel has many characters, many personalities. The person who writes the novel, the author of the novel, he is not inside the novel. Do you find, you look at a novel and you study the novel where is the author in the novel? The author will not be inside the novel. The author has created the plot, the author has created the characters, the author has created the sequence of events, and he's out. So similarly, in this world, all the characters, all the personalities in this world are there, the creations of God. But God doesn't have to be sitting in midst of all of them. So he is out. So essentially, just like if somebody owns a plot of land and he decides to construct a house, and he hires a crew, he hires a construction crew, brings them all together, and he tells them, construct this house. He gives them cement, he gives them earth, he gives them bricks, he gives them wood, everything. And they all are working together and creating the house. So God, when we say he is the supreme source, that means he is the source of everything in this world. He himself doesn't have a source. The second understanding is God is not just the supreme source, he is the supreme proprietor also. If somebody is the source of something, he is also proprietor of it. If I get cement for my house, I own that cement also. It's not that it is somebody else's cement and I am using it. It has to be mine for me to be able to use it. So when a house is constructed using things that I have brought, I have procured, then naturally the house also belongs to me only. In this world, the second definition of God is that God is a supreme. So this is the first definition. The second part is that God is a supreme proprietor. Proprietorship in this world is often misunderstood. One time, Akbar and Birbal were having a discussion, and Birbal, at one point of time, he said that the king is greater than God. So Akbar got really angry. He said, "How can you say that I am greater than God? You are a blasphemer." He was really angry on Birbal. And Birbal said, "No, I am telling you, you are greater than God." Akbar, at some point of time, he got really irritated hearing this constant nagging by Birbal. And finally, he got so irritated, he said, "Get out from my kingdom. I cannot have blasphemers in my kingdom." Birbal said, "Just see, I told you you are greater than God." Akbar said, "How does this prove?" He said, "Even if God wants, he cannot kick me out of my kingdom, out of his kingdom. You can do it. Therefore, you can do something that God can't do." That's when Akbar understood the fact. So God is a proprietor, and people in this world are tenants or caretakers. So essentially, if we forget this fact that we are tenants or caretakers, we start fighting for the fact that we are proprietors. One day I was traveling in a local train, and I saw there was something funny happened. Local trains are places where a lot of self-realization happens. So if you want to become self-realized, you should travel in local trains regularly. So one time I was sitting in the train, and one man came and sat next to me, and another man came in. So this man, he just got up to put his bag on the rack, and in the meanwhile, the other fellow came and sat. This fellow said, "This is my seat." This fellow said, "Where it is written?" So he said, "No, I was sitting over here." So he said, "Now I am sitting here." This fellow got angry. He said, "It's not your fault. Your father has trained you badly." This fellow got angry. He said, "Your father, your whole dynasty is bad." And they started fighting like crazy. Both of them got up. A third person came and sat on that seat, and they continued fighting like anything. And after about 45 minutes, they realized the station has come. They got down, and in the station they continued fighting. A train is gone, seat is gone, but the fight is on. So everything we possess in this world is temporary. So when life itself is temporary, where is the concept of permanent proprietorship? Everybody wants to become permanent owners, permanent proprietors. But unfortunately, if we are permanent, then permanent ownership makes sense. One sadhu, he was meeting a king, and he wanted to tell the king this concept of proprietorship, of how we are just tenants, caretakers. But somehow the king was just not understanding. He was just too focused on, growing his wealth and focused on earning more, focused on just his daily aspects of life. He was just not able to understand the higher things in life. So the sadhu, he came one day to him and he told him, "My dear king, I have a good news and a bad news for you." The king said, the sadhu said, "What do you want to hear? Good news or bad news?" So the king said, "First tell me the bad news." The sadhu said, "The bad news is that you're going to die in 7 days." The king got a shock. He said, "After hearing this bad news, what good news is there to hear?" The sadhu said, "The good news is that though you're going to die in 7 days, after death you're going to go to heaven." So the king became happy. So the sadhu said, "There is again a good news and bad news. The bad news is that though you're going to go to heaven, in heaven there is population explosion." So the king became sad. The sadhu said, "Though there is population explosion, there is a good news. The good news is that you will have a palace of your own." So the king became happy. And then the sadhu said, "Again there is a good news and bad news. The bad news is that though you will have a palace of your own, there are too many mosquitoes over there." So the king became sad. And the sadhu said, "Don't worry, the good news is that though there are so many mosquitoes, there are mosquito nets over there." So the king became happy. The sadhu said, "Again there is good news and bad news. The bad news is that though there are mosquito nets, they have big holes in them." The king became sad. And the sadhu said, "Though there are big holes in them, the good news is that you can stitch them." So the king became happy. And the sadhu said, "Again there is good news and bad news. The bad news is that though you can stitch them, there is no needle in the heaven." So the king became sad. And the sadhu said, "But there is good news. The good news is that when you die, you take one needle with you." And the sadhu walked away. The king thought for some time. And he ran behind the sadhu and said, "Hey, wait a minute. How can I take one needle also with me?" The sadhu said, "That's exactly what I'm telling you. If you can't even carry one needle with you, what are you living for? You're accumulating so much, thinking that all this will remain with you forever. You can't even take one needle." So essentially in this world, when people feel that they are proprietors, without understanding that they're just tenants or caretakers, they make a mistake. So the only proprietor in this world is God. He's one of the supreme proprietor. And the third thing is, he is a supreme enjoyer. Supreme enjoyer means his enjoyment doesn't depend on other people or other things. One of the names of God is Atmaram. He is self-satisfied. And though he is self-satisfied and though he enjoys, he is happy to share his joys with others. Just like a person who owns a building, who has the source of all the things that are used to construct the building, who is the proprietor of the building, naturally is also the enjoyer of the building. So just like that, just like a hotel owner who owns a hotel, he enjoys everything in the hotel. The servant also gets to enjoy all the facilities of the hotel. But the difference between the hotel owner and the servant is that the servant is a dependent enjoyer and the hotel owner is an independent enjoyer. So for the servant to enjoy, he depends on whether he connects with the owner and whether he serves the owner properly. But for the hotel owner, he doesn't have to depend for his enjoyment on others. The fourth thing is that God is also the supreme controller. He is the supreme proprietor supreme source, supreme proprietor, supreme enjoyer, and supreme controller. Human beings in this world have tiny control. We may have control over a small family. Somebody may have a little higher control over an organization. Somebody may have a little higher control over a state. Somebody may have control over a nation. Somebody may have control over the world also. But ultimately, our controllership depends on the range of abilities and allowance that we are given. Just like a cow which is tied to a pole, how much control the cow has, as much as the length of the rope is. If the rope is big, the cow has more control, and if the rope is small, the cow has less control. Similarly, human beings also have a limited amount of control over their lives. Anybody who is a supreme controller, that means who has perfect control over everything, is known as God. One time, one man came to our temple and he said, "I am God." So one of our leaders, he was discussing with him and telling him how you cannot be God. This man kept saying, "No, I am God, I am God." And they were having a discussion for about an hour. And after some time, this man, he said, "Can I use the washroom?" This devotee, he told him, "You're God, na? You're supposed to know everything. Why don't you know where the washroom is?" And this man said, "No, please tell me, this is a little urgent." This devotee said, No, you are supposed to be God, you know everything. Okay, if you don't know where the toilet is, at least control your own system. If you are God, you should have some control at least. Control your system. This man said, "Please, it is getting a little urgent, So first nature was calling, then nature started howling, then nature started yelling, then nature was like screaming. So this man said, "Please." Then the devotee asked him, "So you admit that you are not God?" He said, "No, okay, I admit I am not God." And then they showed him where the toilet was. He went and he came out. And so they asked him, "So, you're not God, right?" He said, "No, I'm God." So he said, "Come on, you just admitted. And what you just went through all this." So he said, "That was my Leela. That was my pastime." So we have such tiny control, and with such tiny control, we feel that we are controllers. We are supreme controllers. So essentially in this world, whatever little control we have is also so limited. One time, Akbar and Birbal, they are having a discussion. And Birbal said, "Every man is controlled by his wife." Akbar said, "Impossible. I don't believe it. Men in my kingdom, they are not controlled by their wives so much." So Birbal said, "Just believe me, So Akbar said, "Let us have a research." So he called all the men in the kingdom who were married. And he told all the men that all the men who follow their wives' instructions stand on one side. So practically everyone went on this side, and only one man was standing this side. So Birbal, he was happy. And Akbar was happy, at least one fellow was there, So he asked him, "So, why did you not go this side?" So this man said, "My wife told me, wherever the crowd is, don't go there. So I'm standing on this side." So essentially, whatever control we have over this world is so limited. So somebody who is a source of things that are used for construction, who is a proprietor, who is the enjoyer, is also naturally the controller. That means he can decide what color of the wall will be there. He can decide what furniture will be there. He can decide which room he wants to use for what. He can use a toilet for his office. He can use his office for his bedroom. He can use his bedroom as a toilet. Whatever he wants, he can do. He has control, right? That's what it means to be a controller. So God is a supreme controller. That means he has perfect control over everything. So if anybody is, if you want to know what is the definition of God, the first definition is these four things. So if anybody says, "I am God," that person has to fit into these four definitions. First is that he is the supreme source of everything. Second is that he is the supreme proprietor of everything. The third is that he is the supreme enjoyer of everything. And the fourth is that he is the supreme controller of everything. That is the first definition of God. The second definition of God is that a person who is wealthy is known as Dhanavan. A person who is strong is known as Balavan. A person who is learned or intelligent is known as Vidwan. So the word Bhaga in this in Sanskrit means opulences. So somebody who possesses all opulences and completeness, such a person is known as Bhagavan. So this is the second definition of God, Bhagavan, the one who possesses 6 opulences and completeness. What is the meaning of opulence? Opulence means anything in this world that is considered to be valuable, that is, that people appreciate and people are attracted towards, that's an opulence. Essentially, there are 6 opulences. And if anybody has these 6 opulences in completeness, that person is considered to be God. So what are the 6 opulences? The first opulence is the opulence of wealth, Aishwarya. So people who have a little wealth in this world, they become very attractive to the eyes of the world. And even the most richest person in the world doesn't have the wealth of the second richest person. The second richest person has his own wealth. So somebody who is all wealthy, who has all the riches in the world, such a person is considered to be God. The second opulence is strength. People in this world who are strong are very attractive. So God is somebody who is all strong. That means he has unlimited strength and more. The third opulence is beauty. Anybody who is beautiful is very attractive in the eyes of this world. And somebody who is God has to be all beautiful. That means he has to be the most beautiful person. He has to have unlimited amount of beauty. The fourth opulence is knowledge. If somebody has to be God, he has to be all knowledgeable. People have knowledge about certain aspects of life. I know people who specialize so much in small aspects of creation. Like there is a person I know who does PhD, who's doing PhD on increasing the longevity of soap bubble. Can you imagine? His whole life is going on one bubble. How to increase the longevity of that bubble. So his knowledge, he is definitely knowledgeable, but his knowledge is limited to that sphere, right? So everyone who has knowledge, his or her knowledge is limited to a certain sphere. Somebody who is God has to be all knowledgeable. And somebody who is God has to be all famous. There are people who are famous in this world, and fame is very attractive. And anybody who is famous, everyone wants to follow, everyone is attracted towards that person. But God means somebody who is all famous. And the sixth opulence is renunciation. Anybody who has all these opulences that we spoke about and also is renounced, completely, all renounced, such a person is considered to be God. So essentially there are 6 opulences, and if anybody has these 6 opulences in completeness, such a person is God. What are the 6 opulences? Wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, fame, and renunciation. So if anybody has all these 6 opulences in completeness, not 1 or 2, he has to have all the 6 opulences in completeness. Such a person is considered to be God. There are many people who have 1 or 2 opulences to a limited extent, and that person becomes very attractive. Like one time, there was an extremely beautiful French actress. She met Albert Einstein, and she told him that if we both get married, then my beauty and your intelligence, we will create a child who is the most knowledgeable and the most beautiful also. Einstein said, what if opposite happens? My beauty and your intelligence comes into the child. So people in this world who have any kind of opulence have a limitation to that opulence. And there's a limitation to having even one opulence, what to speak of having all the opulences in completeness. So essentially these are 2 definitions of God. First is SPEC, which stands for Supreme Proprietor, Supreme Source, Supreme Proprietor, Supreme Enjoyer, and Supreme Controller. And the second is Bhagavan, which stands for the one who possesses 6 opulences in completeness. The 6 opulences are wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, fame, and renunciation. And if anybody fits into these 2 categories and fulfills these 2 definitions, that person can be considered to be God. We will revisit these 2 definitions on day 4 when we are discussing this topic of one God or many gods. And only when we find somebody fitting into these 2 definitions to perfection, we will accept that person as God. Now the question is, when we want to acquire knowledge about God, what is the way to acquire knowledge about God? It is said there are 3 ways of acquiring knowledge about God. In fact, these 3 ways are the ways of acquiring knowledge about anything in this world. Whatever things in this world you take essentially has 3 ways of acquiring knowledge about it. The first way of acquiring knowledge about God is known as Pratyaksha Praman. Prati Aksha. Aksha means eyes. Pratyaksha means knowledge that is acquired by sense perception. We have 5 senses: the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, and the skin. So whatever knowledge is acquired using these 5 senses is known as Pratyaksha Praman. Praman means proof or substance. So Pratyaksha Praman means understanding or gaining knowledge using the senses. Though we want to use our senses have 4 problems. The first problem of the senses is that the senses are imperfect. All our senses are imperfect. The eyes are imperfect, therefore we have to wear specs. Some people have to wear reading glasses and this and that. And even if everything is fine, you don't have to wear specs also. Still, what is your range of seeing? The eyes can only see within the visible range. Anything that is beyond the visible range, the eyes cannot see. Suppose something exists in the infrared rays, you can't see it with your eyes. Something exists in the ultraviolet rays, you can't see it with your eyes. So basically, your eyes have imperfection. The ears have imperfection. Your ears can hear only 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. If somebody blows a dog whistle, somebody gave me a dog whistle a couple of days back just to, test. And I blew the dog whistle, all the dogs in the street started barking. But I couldn't hear anything. Why? Because the frequency of the dog whistle is much higher. So, our ears have limitation in hearing, so they are imperfect. Our tongue has imperfection. If you eat an orange after eating sugar, the orange tastes sour. And if you eat the same orange after, having some lemon, the same orange tastes more sweeter, right? Touch. You have heard of something known as dry ice? If dry ice is rubbed on the skin, it almost feels that the skin is burnt. It's an illusion. It really doesn't happen. So, the first understanding is that all our senses are imperfect. Because our senses are imperfect, the second problem is there. The second defect of the senses is there. That we have a tendency to become illusioned. What is the meaning of illusioned? Illusion means we tend to see things which may not be there. We tend to hear things that may not be there. Like for example, you look at this. What do you see here? Two people, an old man and a young and an old lady. You can see 2 smaller people also with him, one playing a guitar and one holding a pot. Somebody can see a girl coming out from the ears, and somebody can see a bottle, and some people can see that bottle faster. Some people can somebody see a golden cup. You can see many things basically. So essentially, what it is and what we are seeing are totally 2 different things. If you look at this very carefully for a second. Can you see something? What can you see? It seems to be moving, but actually it's not moving at all. You look at this. What do you see here? There's a bridge. Somebody can see a bridge. Somebody can see many ships. So basically, the eyes have a tendency to get illusioned. The ears have a tendency to get illusioned. One time, there was a man who was going to somebody's house, and just when he entered before he entered the house, he heard a conversation happening between 2 people inside. He was bewildered with the conversation. One man was telling the other man, let's cut the neck first. The other fellow said, no, let's cut the hand first. This fellow said, no, I want to cut the neck first. And they were having a fight about what to cut first. This man got completely bewildered. He called the police. Murder is going to happen inside, The police came and opened the door. There were 2 tailors talking. Whether to cut from the neck or whether to cut the hand first, So the ears have a tendency to get illusion. So you just tend to hear and understand things in totally different ways. Similarly, all our senses have tendency to get illusion. Because our senses are imperfect, we tend to get illusion. And because we tend to get illusioned, the third defect of a human being is we tend to commit mistakes. So to err is human, it said. So practically everyone commits so many mistakes. There was a scientist called Hubble, and this man, he invented or he discovered a number that was used in calculations of huge distances in space, and this number was used as a multiplication factor. So whenever you have to calculate distances, huge distances in space, you have to use the Hubble's constant. Now when Hubble invented this number or discovered this number, it was used for quite some years. And some other person, some other scientist, he proved that the number is wrong, and they changed the number. After a couple of years, another fellow came and he said this number also is wrong. They changed the number again. And the number got changed so many times that they now call it Hubble's variable. No guarantee, it can change again also. So can you imagine, to calculate astronomical distances which have to be so precise and perfect, we have something that is constantly changing. Why? To err is human. We tend to make mistakes. And because we tend to make mistakes, and the false ego is so strong, there is a fourth defect, the cheating propensity. So we have imperfect senses. Because of imperfect senses, we have a tendency to get illusion. And because we have a tendency to get illusion, we commit mistakes. And because we commit mistakes and we have a strong false ego, we have the fourth defect, which is cheating propensity. Everywhere you cover up the mistakes that you make. Not just in your regular lifestyle, but even in the most scientific backgrounds. One time there was a discovery which became a big controversy. Charles Darwin, when he proposed this whole concept of the evolution theory, there was one thing that really was a link, it was called a missing link, which actually could not complete his understanding of the theory, or could not prove that his theory was perfect. So this was the evolution between a monkey to a human being. So there was one particular bone, the jawbone. If it was discovered, then whatever Darwin said was perfect, So people are really trying to explore and find that particular jawbone, which was like the missing link between the human and the monkey. And finally, one man, he said, I found it. And he showed that, jawbone to the world. And people were really surprised, and he got accolades and awards and so many things. And it was kept in the British Museum, that particular structure. After about 40 years after this incident, it was discovered this man had taken a human skull and he had sawed it, to look like the missing link. Completely cheated the world for 40 years practically, This became famously known as the Piltdown Man case, the case of the missing link. So, because we have imperfect senses, we have a tendency to get illusion. And because we have a tendency to get illusion, we commit mistakes. And because we commit mistakes, we have a cheating propensity. The false ego is very strong. So now, with these four defects in every human being, what is the possibility of we acquiring knowledge about God and that knowledge being accurate and perfect? So, whatever understanding we have about God, what to speak of God, even things about this world itself, whatever understanding is there is limited because of these four defects. And what to speak of understanding about God, which is, such a high subject matter. So the second way of acquiring knowledge about God is known as Anuman Praman. Anuman essentially means guesswork, or in Bombay language, the tukka, Try, ho gaya to theek hai, nahi hua to theek hai, So one of the ways of getting knowledge is known as Anuman Praman. Essentially, if you study the whole Charles Darwin's theory, even the Big Bang theory, it falls under Anuman Praman. Anuman Praman means hypothesis You have a theory and you have a hypothesis, and you use the theory and hypothesis and to come to some conclusion. Charles Darwin's theory, the whole theory of origin of species, you know how it begins? He begins the book by saying, I think. Can you imagine? One person's thinking is the result of everybody in the world accepting this fellow's thinking is right. Fortunately or unfortunately, there are many people who have understood and proved that he is wrong. There's one man who wrote a book called 101 Reasons Why Charles Darwin's Theory is Stupid. Scientifically proving how the whole concept of Darwin's theory is absolutely wrong. And nowadays, of course, in many education institutes, they don't even accept it. So basically, the understanding is, have you all heard in your childhood about the story of the 6 blind men who are, looking at an elephant, trying to understand what an elephant is? That's exactly how understanding God is. So the 6 blind men, one was holding the trunk, he was saying elephant is like a rope. One was holding the leg, he was saying elephant is like a tree. And one was holding the tail, he was saying elephant is like a snake, And each one was right to its limited extent. But the understanding that they had was not complete. So similarly, when we use Anuman Praman to understand things in life, using guesswork, using speculation, to some extent we will get, to some direction. But you cannot say that you have perfect knowledge by Anuman Praman. Because Anuman Praman is based on your limitations. It is based on your limited understanding of this world and your limited ability to understand this world. With the 4 defects that we spoke about, Anuman Praman becomes even more dangerous. So there are 2 ways of understanding anything in this world. One is known as deductive knowledge and the second is known as inductive knowledge. So this Anuman Praman and Pratyaksha Praman come in inductive way of understanding knowledge about anything. Inductive way means that I go up and try to explore. I put my effort and try to understand things. When I put my effort and try to understand things, it is not necessarily that you will come to the right conclusion all the time. Yes, you may come to the right conclusion, but not always. One time, there was a scientist who was experimenting on cockroaches. So, he stood on one side, he put a cockroach on the table, and he went to the other side and tapped the table. The cockroach came running to where he was tapping. Next, he removed one leg of the cockroach and put it on the table, and he went and tapped. The cockroach still came somehow. Then he removed one more leg and he put it on the table. The cockroach came struggling. Then he started removing one by one all the legs. And finally, when he removed all the legs, the cockroach didn't come. He said his conclusion was the hearing capacity of the cockroach is connected with the number of legs that the cockroach has. If the number of legs of the cockroach is lesser, the hearing capacity decreases. This is known as Anuman Praman, speculation, guesswork. So one time there were 3 doctors who were looking at a man walking on the street. And all the 3 doctors started analyzing what is wrong with him. This man was limping badly. So one doctor said, this person has torn ligaments. The second doctor said, impossible. This person has fractured his leg. The third person said, impossible. He has a nervous defect. They all started arguing with each other. They said, finally, let's go and find out who is right. They had a bet. I went to this man and asked him, do you have a fracture? Do you have a ligament tear? Or do you have a nervous problem? This man said, my slipper is broken. So essentially, Anuman Brahman or guesswork is a very highly improbable and an impractical way of understanding knowledge about anything in this world. What to speak of understanding knowledge about God? The third way of understanding, gaining knowledge about God is known as Shabda Praman. Shabda Praman means the process of disciplic succession, the process of deductive type of knowledge. Inductive process means I go and find out what is right and what is wrong. Deductive process means I receive the knowledge from a higher source who has understanding of what is right and what is wrong. So deductive type of knowledge is like somebody, in big buildings, when they have to pass cement or bricks from top to bottom, they have a chain and they keep passing, in the chain and then it comes down. Discipline succession is exactly like that. So somebody who has the right understanding, he gives to somebody else. Then that person gives to somebody else. That person comes to give to somebody else. And it comes down in a process, in an order. And finally it comes to us. And then when we receive it, it is not our speculation. It is not based on our understanding. It is not based on our 4 defective limitations. But it is based on a higher understanding which comes down to us. Just like we look at a radio transmitter. When we look at radio, immediately we understand whatever comes out from the radio, we know it is truth. Why? Because there is an authority behind it. There is a certified authority who is conducting programs on that radio. Therefore, we assume that whatever is there on the radio is truth. Similarly, when we want to understand anything about God, when we look at an unadulterated chain or unadulterated authority who gives us this message, then we know it is the truth. So, to understand knowledge about any of the sciences, we have different fields of understanding. Like for example, if you want to understand anything about electrical science, we have B.L. Thareja, authority. Whatever is written in B.L. Thareja has to be the truth. We have law, we have Sujata law series, or we have air manuals. Whatever is written in those manuals, they are perfectly true. We have to assume that because they are the authorities in that field. Similarly, what is that authority in understanding knowledge about God? It is explained that the authority in understanding knowledge about God is the scriptures. The scriptures are considered to be the Shabda, word of authority in understanding knowledge about God. So the question now is that when we say that scriptures are the written word of God, many people have doubts. How it is possible that scriptures can be written word of God? It is written by human beings ultimately. Because if it is written by human beings, the human beings have the 4 defects also. The scriptures are called as apaurushya. The word apaurushya means they have no human interference. They have no human intervention. And they are words of authority of God. Now the question is, how can we have faith that the scriptures are the words of God? How can we have accept the scriptures have to be authorities in understanding knowledge about God? And the question is, why should I accept the scriptures as an authority at all? Let us take some example. Suppose I want to learn to cook rasgullas. Cooking rasgulla is a little complicated subject matter. For those who know cooking. And those who don't know cooking to make rasgullas, they definitely will make that shape, but they will not create that. They will not get the texture. They will not get the softness. They will not get that exact proportion. So there are 3 ways to make rasgullas. First is pratyaksha praman. Pratyaksha praman means go and try in the kitchen. You look at a rasgulla, you know what it looks like. So go in the kitchen and look at all the ingredients that are there, and find out what are the ingredients that will give me this result, and try it. The second is anuman praman. Anuman praman means you can imagine how to cook. Sit and think. If I cook like this, like this, like this, then you will get rasgulla. The third way is shabda praman. Go and ask somebody who knows to cook how to make rasgulla. That fellow tells you, and just hear that person telling you how to cook. That's it. You know how to cook it. So there are 2 types of faith. One is known as blind faith, and the second is known as reasonable faith. So many people, when they accept anything, they accept it based on blind faith. Just blindly following something. That is wrong. The second is known as reasonable faith. The reasonable faith means we don't accept anything directly. We test it. We understand it first. And if it logically makes sense and it stands the test of time, then we have faith in it. Then we deposit faith in it. So the scriptures essentially are the written words of God. There are 3 proofs why we can have faith in the scriptures. The first proof of why we can have faith in the scriptures is known as historical information being proven to be true. What is geography called in Hindi? Bhugol. What is the meaning of Bhugol? Bhumi gol hai. Earth is round. At some point of time in history, Earth was considered to be flat. Christopher Columbus was told, don't go too far, otherwise you will fall down. Earth will get over and you'll fall down. But the scriptures have always been calling Earth as Bhugol. It's not that it is a newly invented term. This is a Sanskrit term which has been there from time immemorial. The development of the child in the womb, this is a subject called embryology. Science has understood the whole concept of birth of a child, the whole embryology, a couple of decades before. Nothing before that. There was absolutely no knowledge before that. But if you study the scriptures, there is a scripture known as the Srimad Bhagavatam. The third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you sit with that, there are Sanskrit verses that talk about exact formation of the embryo through the 9 months of pregnancy. And the details are mind-blowing. The details are so accurate. I once sat with the science textbook compared with the stage by stage that is written in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not English, it's Sanskrit. Sanskrit is a watertight language. You can't just meddle around with Sanskrit too much. To perfection. Can you imagine what kind of evolved science this was? And the Srimad Bhagavatam was written 5,000 years before. So, cow dung having antiseptic properties. Few decades back, scientists discovered or proved the fact that cow dung does have antiseptic properties. And after that, many people started using cow dung. But the scriptures have always been talking about the purifying agency of cow dung, have always been speaking about the purifying effect of cow dung and the antiseptic properties of cow dung. In fact, there is such great wisdom in the scriptures that almost it makes you shocked all the time. There is a process in Ayurveda which says that diamond is one of the most strongest substances in this world. And you cannot easily break diamonds, nor can you dissolve diamonds, right? Impossible practically. But in Ayurveda, there is a process of how to dissolve a diamond. And the solution lies not in certain chemicals or some processes. It lies in an insect. There is a particular type of beetle. The blood of this particular beetle, if the diamond is soaked in, the diamond starts melting. And there is a certain process which has to be carried out after the diamond is kept in that blood of the beetle. Can you imagine what kind of knowledge, what kind of information is there? If you all have seen cows, have you all seen that the hump of the cow, is very special. And in the scriptures, the hump of the cow has been given a lot of special reference. You know why? Many reasons, but one of the reasons is this. The sun has a certain filament known as soletin. Have you heard of this filament? This filament of the sun, this particular substance in the sun, is supposed to be extremely healthy. It's supposed to be extremely healthy for the body. And therefore, human beings who don't have much exposure to the sun, they become diseased. They become depressed in the mind. London, no sun, lot of depression. So people who live in AC rooms all the time, in AC offices all the time, they tend to become completely depressed. Anyway, so one of the properties of the sun, there's a substance called soletin. This soletin substance from the sun, it cannot be captured in any other way except through the hump of the cow. The cow has a nerve in its hump known as the Surya Nadi. The Surya Nadi is the only substance in the world that can capture that filament from the sun. And that filament of that sun enters into the milk of the cow. And therefore the milk of the cow is considered to be very healthy. Now, just to give you all a better understanding, what is the color of the milk? Milk is white in color. But what is the color of ghee? Ghee is golden in color. Where does the golden substance come from? That golden color of the ghee is a sun element, is a filament of the sun. It comes out, when the process, the milk goes through the process. So, the scriptures give solid understanding of different aspects of life that are historically proven to be true. Plants having life. Who proved it? Bose, Jagdish Chandra Bose. Now, did he actually prove it? The scriptures have always been talking about plants having life, right? So, what is already there in the scriptures thousands of years before, science just reinvents it or reproves it. For us to have faith. And yes, plants have life. We want a scientist to tell, And then we say, hey, dekho, scientist ne bola na, theek hi hoga, So, from our perspective, if you just study history, so many, I'm just giving you some examples. There are hundreds of such examples of historical information that has been proven to be true based on the scriptures. The scriptures, the second reason why we can have faith in the scriptures is because the scriptures are like instruction manuals. Just like when you buy a mobile phone or some gadget, you get a manual along with it. What does the manual do to us? The manual just helps us understand how to use the device to the optimum use, the best way, best possible way. Now, without reading the manual also you can use the device. You will not know how to switch it off. Hare Krishna. So essentially, the manual helps us understand the device perfectly. So similarly, the human body is like a yantra, machine. And this machine comes with a manual. The scriptures are like the manual that helps us understand how to make optimum use of this device, of this yantra. And therefore, the scripture is very important for us. And the third reason why we can have faith in the scripture is because the scriptures have many predictions that have come to be true. The appearance of Gautam Buddha was predicted 5,000 years before in the scriptures. The Srimad Bhagavatam talks about the appearance of Gautam Buddha. The appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared 500 years before, was predicted in the scriptures thousands of years before. The Mahabharata talks about his appearance. The Srimad Bhagavatam talks about his appearance. So many places in the Vedic scriptures which have been written millions of years before talk about the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. The appearance of Chanakya Pandit is there in the scriptures. The appearance of Chandragupta Maurya is there in the scriptures. The Bhavishya Puran talks about the appearance of Jesus Christ. The Bhavishya Puran talks about the appearance of Prophet Muhammad. So practically there are so many predictions that are there in the scriptures that have proven to be true. In fact, in today's day and time, there are so many things that the scriptures have predicted are going to be the situation in today's times. 5,000 years before, in the Srimad Bhagavatam it is written how people in Kali Yuga, in this particular age, will behave. It is said that, so many, I'll tell you some of them. Beauty in this age will remain only connected to hairstyle. 5,000 years before it was predicted. And people, their capacity of learning, capacity of understanding will keep decreasing. I remember in my younger days, I could remember mobile numbers easily. I could remember even up to 100 numbers. Now I can't even remember the most used numbers, right? Capacity is decreasing slowly over a period of time. After some time, if you ask people calculate 2 into 2, they will use a calculator, Capacity decreases over a period of time. Age spans, life spans are decreasing. Srimad Bhagavatam says that there will be a point of time when if a person lives up to 20 years, he'll be considered to be a grand old man or woman. It's also already happening. Some point in history, people, if they lived up to 94, 95, 100, very common. But now, 50, 60 is, it's considered to be grand old age. The scriptures also talk about the priorities of people. It says that relationships in this world will only be for the purpose of mutual pleasure. 5,000 years before predicted, and it's happening today. Live-in relationships, all kinds of weird types of relationships. It is also predicted in the Srimad Bhagavatam that people in this age, they will start eating fetuses of their own children. South Korea, it is already happening. In fact, in many hotels in South Korea, human fetuses are considered to be delicacies. People pay unlimited amount of money for it. Can you imagine, thousands of years before, it's already predicted and it's happening. And if I tell you more predictions, you will faint. So I'm not going to tell you more. Enough for today. But there are many such descriptions and such predictions that are there in the scriptures that have been proven to be true. The scriptures talk about sciences which are very mind-blowing. There is a scripture called the Vimana Shastra. This scripture is written by Bharadwaj Muni. And this scripture is studied by Russian scientists in NASA, there are 2 payrolls. On the payroll of NASA, there are 2 posts for Sanskrit scholars. And these people are constantly studying the Viman Shastra of Bharadwaj Muni. And Viman Shastra describes details about making of airplanes. But unfortunately, all these scriptures, they are not just based on competence, but they're based on character. So though you may be able to understand Sanskrit, you cannot apply it, you cannot use it, because you have to have the character to be able to apply it. So they are all password protected in different ways, you know. So, and we can go on and on and on about the unlimited types of predictions that are there about the scriptures. But suffice to say that there are 3 proofs for why we can have faith in the scriptures. The first proof is that historical information that has been proven to be true. The second proof is that the scriptures are like instruction manuals to guide us in our lives. The third proof is that the scriptures have many predictions that are proven to be true. Quickly, I'll summarize whatever I spoke today, then we can have question answers. We have sufficient time today. The first proof, we started the discussion by talking about proof for the existence of God. I spoke about 4 proofs. Creation implies a creator, laws imply a lawmaker, organization and order, and design implies an intelligent designer. Then we spoke about 2 definitions of God. The first definition of God is SPEC, which stands for Supreme Source, Supreme Proprietor, Supreme Enjoyer, and Supreme Controller of everything. The second definition is Bhagavan, which stands for the one who possesses 6 opulences in completeness. What are the 6 opulences? Wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, fame, and renunciation. If anybody has all these 6 opulences in completeness, such a person is called as God. And then we discussed about this concept of seeing God, why we can't see God. We discussed this, the theory of cause and effect. There are many things in this world that we can't see the cause of. But when we see the effect that that theory, that thing is causing, then we immediately conclude that there is a cause behind the effect. So similarly, we may not be able to see God, but we can see the effect that He is having in this world. And because we are seeing the effect that He is having in this world, then we easily conclude that there is somebody who is causing that effect to happen. And then we spoke about 3 methods of gaining knowledge about God. The first method we spoke about was Pratyaksha Praman. Pratyaksha Praman means sense perception. Understanding, gaining knowledge using our senses. Then we saw that Pratyaksha Praman is not the best way of gaining knowledge, because every human has 4 defects. What are the 4 defects? Imperfect senses, tendency to be illusioned, tendency to commit mistakes, and cheating propensity. And because we have these 4 defects, whatever knowledge we gain using our senses also naturally has effects. You use a telescope to see things that are there in the space. Though you are using a device which is perfect, your eyes are imperfect. So whatever knowledge you take in goes in through that imperfection of the eyes, and you analyze it. So whatever you see is not what is the reality. You see based on your limitations, and that's what you perceive. And if you conclude, especially when you conclude about God based on your limitations, your understanding will always be imperfect. The second method of gaining knowledge about God is Anuman Praman. Anuman Praman essentially means guesswork. So basically, if we think, using our limited intelligence, trying to speculate and understand anything about God, how much will our thinking and capacity of understanding necessarily be the absolute truth? Charles Darwin's theory, I will analyze this theory again on day 5. And I will tell you a background of why he proposed this theory. Many times when we go through scientific theories, when we go through any theories in this world, people coming up with certain concepts, certain inventions, we don't understand what is the background behind it. On day 5, we will start the discussion by talking about what is the background and why Charles Darwin spoke the whole theory, And that's when we will realize that behind coming up with such a fascinating theory, there is a reason which is very personal, right? And so Anuman Praman cannot necessarily be the perfect way of gaining knowledge about God, because guesswork need not be absolute truth. And the third way of gaining knowledge about God is Shabda Praman. Shabda means the word of authority. And the scriptures are the written word of God, the written word of authority. And when we learn based on the authority, that is known as deductive knowledge. That means we are not trying using our defective senses to gain knowledge. but we are accepting knowledge that is coming down in a disciplic succession, which is known as parampara. And that knowledge is considered to be perfect knowledge. Just like the word of authority of, in the radio or certain, ways in which authoritative information is given, we accept it as to be truth. Similarly, the scriptures can be accepted as truth based on three proofs why we can have faith in the scriptures. First is historical information that has been proven true. We saw so many historical information that the scriptures have stood the test of time. And in fact, the scriptures don't change their words. They don't change their understandings. Science keeps changing all the time, The Big Bang Theory, it started with the Big Bang, the understanding of the Big Bang Theory. Then after some time, there is a latest addition to the Big Bang Theory known as Kessler Theory. The Kessler Theory essentially says that the point is not a stationary point, it's a dynamic point. That means that point is expands and contracts, and which means that they are slightly changing it again. We'll discuss about this again on day 5 a little more, and study how the scriptures have a deeper understanding to the Big Bang Theory also. And then we saw scriptures also have are like instruction manuals that teach us how to use the human body to the perfection. Yesterday we spoke about how rare the human body is. The scriptures actually enhance the understanding of the best optimum use of the human body, especially the ABCD, ability of higher inquiry, ability to experience bliss, the ability to make the right choices and determination to follow the A, B and C. That is enhanced when we have understanding based on the scriptures. And finally, the scriptures have many predictions that have been proven to be true, and because these predictions are so accurate and perfect and they have stood the test of time, we can have faith in the scriptures. Tomorrow, I'll be building up on this. Tomorrow, we will start our discussion by discussing a little more on the concept of why we can have faith in the scriptures. In fact, from today onwards, whatever I'm going to discuss is going to be based on this established understanding of the fact that we are having faith in the scriptures. Tomorrow, we'll have deeper discussions about why there are so many scriptures. We'll have deeper discussions about, how do we understand this to have more faith in the scriptures. That we will discuss tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. But suffice for today, we need to have faith in the scriptures for us to be able to understand things that we're going to discuss further. So tomorrow we're going to discuss day 3, which is the science of the soul, or it is called as Who Am I? This is a very, very introspective topic. This is a topic that you will really be fascinated by. Your understanding and appreciation of life will change completely if you understand this topic nicely. In fact, this topic is the foundation of spiritual life. So I would earnestly ask all of you all to attend tomorrow's session, as enthusiastically as possible and with a complete focus. And also, my suggestion is that tomorrow when we come, you will experience something totally different what you have not experienced in the first 2 days. The first 2 days, many of the things you may have already known. You may say, I already know this and I know that. But tomorrow onwards, we are going to go deeper and deeper into the ocean, And by the time day 5 comes, you will be drowning practically, So your head might spin a little bit. So don't worry, it's not so bad, but it's deep. It's definitely deep, and you will love it. Thank you very much.